My name is David McLeod, and I am your life mastery coach and author of the delightful little book, A Life to Die For. I'm also one of the co authors in the best selling series, The Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Self Care. Welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. This is episode 228, and today's topic is healing repressed anger. Now, I know this is going to be a challenging topic for some people, but we're going to have fun because repressed anger, like an invisible pressure cooker, can silently wreak havoc on our emotional and physical well being. When we suppress our anger, we deny ourselves the opportunity to express valid feelings, leading to a buildup of tension and resentment. Now, this can manifest in various ways, such as increased stress, irritability, and even physical symptoms like headaches or digestive issues, or even worse. And if that's not enough, unprocessed anger has a nasty tendency to seep into other areas of our lives, bringing even more havoc on our relationships, clouding our judgments and decision makings, and generally ruining our overall outlook on life. Now, healing from repressed anger requires us to prioritize things like self awareness, emotional expression, and healthy coping mechanisms. Acknowledging and accepting our anger as a valid emotion is the first step toward healing. Creating a safe space to express and process anger is crucial, whether it's through journaling or talking to a trusted friend or a therapist, even, or engaging in physical activities like exercise or art that allow for emotional release. So, learning constructive communication skills can help us express our feelings without resorting to some of the commonly expected behaviors in anger, things like aggression. And this can move us towards healthier interactions with others so that we reduce the risk of future anger repression. Now, this is such an important topic for discussion, and I think we can probably all see what's going on in our world today and recognize that there's a lot of repressed anger in the world. So this is something that affects everyone. And so I'm really thrilled to bring back my friend and colleague, the emotional pro, or emotional mastery pro, as I like to call her, Ilene Dillon. Now, she's going to help share and shine a healing light on this subject. So please welcome Ilene back to the program today. Hello, Ilene. Gotta
Hi,
share
David.
share your camera. Beautiful. There you are. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your really crazy busy schedule to rejoin me on the Life Mastery TV program. It's
It
awesome to
is
see you again.
my absolute pleasure, and I'm very excited because my whole life is dedicated to sharing what I've spent the last 50 years learning about emotions, which uh, my, because these emotions, especially anger, came up in my own life and were ruining it. The anger was ruining my life and my relationship with my children. I particularly uh, have wanted something that would be easy, simple to work with, and something that worked, and something that lasted. And
Right.
that's my aim in what I'm sharing now, is to help people to understand that working with repressed anger is very simple. It's not always easy, but it's very simple. And it's something we can do on our own. We don't necessarily have to have a therapist, unless we've been storing anger for a long time and we have a lot inside. And then
Right.
it's very helpful to have somebody be with us while we release it. But it's something that we all need to start doing now, largely because we're becoming aware, and I know you've talked about this a lot on your show, we're becoming aware that there's more to us than just being plain old human beings. We are
Right.
also energy beings, and emotions have to everything to do with our energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And before I dive any deeper on this just now, I just want to say thank you and welcome to the folks who have joined us live today. Um, if you have a question or a comment or would like to just share your own perspective on something we're talking about, please feel free to put that into the public chat there. You should see that on the left side of your screen. Well, It might be on, I don't know, if you're on a mobile phone or something, it might be somewhere else. But hopefully you can find the public chat and just do some typing and put your comments in there, and we'll do our best to respond to those right away. So Cher T says hi to all. Well, hi to you too, Cher. Thanks for being here. Ilene, you mentioned that you had some anger in your life. Now, I know you and I have spoken about this. I had a lot of anger in my life. In fact, for the first 40 years of my life, I was in total denial about my anger for very, very long time. And it wasn't until a really explosive and unpleasant situation came up that I finally realized I had to do something about this. And that was really a huge wake up call for me. And I know that I would say, maybe this is not a slight exaggeration, I would say 100% of the people on this planet have a problem with repressed anger. That's all right. Maybe it's only 99.9%, but I think I am close to the truth here. Surely there are some people who maybe have learned to deal with it and have moved beyond it and have healed all that stuff, but we all have to deal with it one way or another.
And you
So,
know why that is that so many of us have repressed anger? Because we've been taught to repress it. Almost
yeah,
everybody has been taught, hold it back, you don't want to hurt somebody, hold it back, you don't want to embarrass yourself, hold it back, you want a promotion at work. So I totally agree with you. It is the baseline issue in our world today, not only with ourselves, but with our society.
right. But isn't it even kind of what's the word? Hypocritical of our society, because on the one hand we tell people to repress and hold in their anger, but on the other hand we say war is okay. It's okay for nations to have war against another war. And what is war but the ultimate expression of anger?
But if
It just
you
blows
don't
my
know,
mind how hypocritical we can be in our world.
but if you don't know what how to deal with anger, or that it's repressed anger that's at the base of all of that, then you're going to find explanations, cognitive dissonance. You're going to find explanations why
Right.
it's okay for you to continue to do things. Most people I've ever talked to about war says that's human nature.
Right.
We can't get away from that. Well, as a recovered angry person, I aver that we can get away from it. I want to start with an exercise to and then talk some about where you're going with this, David. The exercise, and David, I'd like you to do it too, is I
Okay.
want everybody on this call to grip your hand really tightly so that you can feel your fingernails cutting into your heavy part of your hand, and just hold it like that while I talk with you. So we have been taught for generations to repress anger. And so that's my explanation for why I think everybody has repressed anger. And a lot of times when I say, oh, people need to deal with anger, people react with, oh, yes, there are a lot of angry people. But you can look like you're not angry at all and still have repressed anger. And it still, as you were saying, can now notice how you're feeling with this hand as we go along.
Yeah,
um,
it's
and,
not comfortable.
don't complain, David. Okay. um, and so we're we have all learned to hold on to it. And what's happening, okay, turn it loose, David turned it loose. So how did
Yeah.
you feel, David? I'm going to use you as an example here,
Sure.
if you don't mind, but everybody else follow along. How did you feel when you first clenched your hand? What were you aware of feeling?
Um, well, the whole clenching mechanism, it feels tight. Tightness is the
Hmm.
word that comes to mind. And I
Okay.
noticed, because I was doing this, I was having a hard time breathing.
Uh-huh.
It was affecting
Interesting.
my breath. And I
Okay.
had to really focus on staying breath. It also, I found it distracting. I had a hard time concentrating on what you were saying. So
Okay.
that tension was just drawing my attention away from everything else.
And did that level of distress continue all the way through, or did it ease
I
off or
was,
numb out?
yeah, I think I did it for maybe a minute or a minute and a half. And I finally said, I can't do this anymore. I have to let
Okay.
it go.
So, this exercise, thank you very much. This exercise illustrates what happens when we hold on to anger. We hold on to anger, and it's initially painful. It keeps us from breathing. We have to work really hard to keep holding this, so we can't, the our other emotions can't flow, right? And very often, the longer you hold it, the longer you hold anger inside of you, the more numb you get to the
Right.
fact that you're holding it. And then when you turn it loose, you have a rush where you feel that pain and go, boy, I'm glad I stopped that. That really hurts. And then
Exactly.
you begin to come back to normal. And this is a really simple but fantastic demonstration of repressed anger. Now,
Right.
there are
Now,
three
hold on.
ways.
Before you
Yeah,
continue, I just want
yeah.
to invite the people who are here on the show. If you had an experience similar to mine, or if yours was different, I'd like to hear how it was for you if you were following along with that. Please feel free to just share in the chat there. Yeah, I kind of knew where you were going as soon as you said that, because these are great exercises that we do all the time as therapists and as coaches, trying to get people to feel something in their body. And you draw attention to something like this. Whoops, there it is. Now you draw attention to that and notice how you feel. And I do that kind of work myself in shadow work with people. They tell me they've got an issue, or they're feeling something, or they've got some story, and I just say, fine, tell me where that shows up in your body.
Exactly. And that's very important because when it shows up, this is the center of resentment. This is where the throat is the center of resentment. And people who are choked with anger or very full of anger will not be able to speak up well. Recently, I was on the phone with my daughter with AT&T. We were trying to straighten something out, and I mentioned my age to the man that was helping us, and he went, "You don't sound like you're 80." And I attribute that to the fact that I'm no longer choked with anger. So my
Yeah.
voice can come out. All right. And there are all these little things that we don't really know about. So, what's important here is that anger is the most active emotion that we experience. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means and why it matters. As an aside, David, you've been talking about my anger and our anger and your anger. And I want to suggest, or I want to share that I no longer put possessive pronouns on anger or other emotions. And I'll explain why that is later. I now say the anger that came up in me, the anger I feel, and the sadness I feel, um, in part, large part, not to become attached to it or have it attached to me.
Well, and the other side of that is not to be identified with it. Because
That's exactly it.
if I refer to it as my anger, then I may translate that to say I am angry. And when I say
Right.
I am taking ownership of the identity of anger, which of
Yes.
course is not really true. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's really important for us, I think, to separate the feeling and the having of the feeling to the
Mm-hmm.
being of the feeling. They're
Yes.
very, very different things. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something that takes practice, it takes effort. And I think people have to learn, and I hope we can encourage people to learn that today. Stop saying I am angry and start saying I am feeling anger.
Or there is anger arising in me, or uh, yes, it's. I'm still correcting myself because
Of
we've been
course,
doing it for
it's an
so long.
ongoing process.
So, so I want to talk for a minute about my perception of what anger is. In preparation for this show, once again, I went onto the American Psychological Association website and I typed in the words definition of anger. Here are the kinds of things I got. I got a list of articles about anger, how anger shows up, how to keep anger from getting the best of you, the differences between healthy and harmful anger, and the effects of emotion, PTSD, and anger catharsis. You'll note that there's no definition of anger. None of it says this is what anger is. And my husband, Bob, who was a neurosurgeon, died in 2016. And he taught me, as a good doctor, that if you don't have a good diagnosis, you can't do a good job of treating something.
Right.
And I want to go on record as saying I think our difficulty in dealing with anger over these many years is that we haven't had an agreed upon idea about what it is. And as you mentioned, David, it's really creating problems in our lives. It can destroy our self-esteem. It can cause us to misperceive things. It can block us from our success. It can contribute to mental health problems. It also, we now have evidence from research that anger that we hold inside of us over time is a contributing causative factor to the development of killer diseases like diabetes and heart disease and circulatory problems and cancer. We've
Correct.
got statistical evidence. So part of what is really important, the biggest motivator for me at this point, is anger is literally killing us, repressed anger. And the reason we want to release it is so we can stop setting ourselves up to literally die from the anger that we have been holding on inside, many times without knowing it.
Right.
Yep.
So I wanted to acknowledge a couple of comments that were made here while we were speaking, and so we've moved on from this topic a little bit. But Cher mentioned that she is still feeling the holding. So I guess she was doing the hand exercise, and she said she was still feeling it. And Decky mentioned that she was relating to my experience of having difficulty paying attention to what Ilene was saying. So she observes that we tend to slide out of being present when anger builds up and takes over in our lives. Beautiful observation, Decky. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
And you know,
Get
Ilene,
ready. Dakey makes observations like that. You get ready. Thank you, Dakey.
Good. That's what I like to hear, like to see. Now, you mentioned about the not knowing. I would say that it's difficult to define what anger is, just as it would be difficult to define any individual emotion, because each of us, you may experience anger, and I might be able to perceive that you are experiencing anger while not actually feeling anger myself. So
of course,
I can say, oh, she's feeling angry right now, or she's feeling anger, or she's experiencing anger, whatever it is I say in my mind. And that may put me in a place of maybe preparing for an outburst or having some kind of a negative reaction of my own. Maybe I get triggered. Maybe my fear takes over. And it's hard for me to stay in my compassionate place when I notice you expressing anger. Now, on the other hand, when I have an angry experience in my life, my expression of that might be quite different, but you could still say, wow, that looks like David experiencing anger right now. I don't think either one of us could say with a certainty, well, this is exactly what it was that I was experiencing. You know?
Well, I can, I appreciate your statement. Remember that I said I wanted something that was simple, that worked and lasted.
Right.
And what happened for me, David, let me just back up a minute. What happened for me is I had a very traumatic experience when I was 28 years old. And I had had a difficult early life, and I had stored up a lot of anger, but I had no awareness of it at all. But as soon as I had that traumatic incident, out came buckets and buckets and buckets of anger. It took me 2 years to get all of it out of me, right?
Right.
And it was scary and it was powerful. And I had a young child. I was a newly minted single mother and starting my own business. I had a master's degree in social welfare and a private practice. And so I figured, well, I'm going to figure out what causes us to be angry. What's the purpose of it? What can you do about it? So I went back, that was pre internet days. I went back to the University of California School of Social Welfare Library at Berkeley, California, and worked with the reference librarians to find out answers to those questions. And guess what? After 3 or 4 days of looking, we found out there were no answers to those questions
Right.
available in the literature that was in the early 70s. All right. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to live with this ongoing, so I'm going to have to figure out something. So I enrolled in individual therapy, group therapy, spiritual awareness classes, talked with colleagues, read, talked with my clients, and I took Aikido, all trying to figure out what is this about. And what I have discovered is that social science researchers will look at something like schizophrenia, which for most people has a factor of anger as part of the illness, but they didn't look separately at emotions. So we didn't have information about emotions. And, spiritually and physically with the Aikido, plus the learning and the personal growth, those things started bringing me answers. And I came to the conclusion that what anger really is, what any emotion, I began to learn about emotions, what any emotion is energy. And that's why it's important that as we become aware of our energy beings, we know how to work with it, because it's the fastest way to help us work well as energy beings. So I also developed what I call the universal cause of anger. And this speaks to what you were talking about. The universal cause is that I'll use myself as an example. I have an idea of how things are supposed to be. David, if I'm married to you and you come home from work and I believe that you are supposed to give me a kiss and say hello when you walk in the door and you don't do it, I'll get mad. However, if I'm your wife and you come home and I believe you should leave me alone for a half hour till you cool down and relax a bit from your day and you don't do that, I'll get mad also, right? Whatever it is that I believe you should or should not do, that's what I'm going to get angry about. And once I have those shoulds, just like a kid in kindergarten who says you should wait your turn, I'm going to get angry if my shoulds get violated. They form an expectation for me, right? And whenever my expectation of how things are supposed to happen in the world, and whenever my expectations are not met, then I get angry. So, but why are my expectations not met? This is really important in understanding how to work with anger. Why do you think my expectations that you should kiss me or not kiss me are not met, David?
Well, there could be a whole bunch of reasons for that. One of
Go for
them,
the
and the most
simplest
obvious
one.
one that comes to my mind, is you never told anybody.
You didn't tell anybody. It's not your way of operating, it's my way of
Right.
operating, the whole thing. So, what anger really is pointing out to me is that I have a mistaken expectation about how the world is supposed to work.
Right.
And
Well,
so, this,
that's interesting, and I really like the way you're describing this. Um, I have my own understanding of anger as well. Mine boils down to an even simpler description. I get angry when I don't get what I want. Period. And that's
okay,
ultimately what I think you're saying here. There's something I want, I don't get it, I get angry. That's kind of where the energy comes from. And the question is it really the what I want, not getting it, that is the problem? Or is it the attachment to what I want that causes the anger? And that's
See,
where I think,
I think
yeah, I
it's
think
the
that's where we're
expectation.
going here is
I think
when
it's the
we get attached,
expectation.
when we get attached to a particular outcome, and that outcome doesn't arrive, then we say
Mhm.
we've been cheated, we've been robbed, we've been, we make up all these stories. And every one of these things, including the attachment itself, is related to our ego mind. And that's another thing I talk a lot about is ego mind versus our spiritual nature, our soul. And whenever we have anger, it's because our ego mind has told us we're supposed to have something and we don't have it, and therefore we have to get angry about it.
Right. So,
That,
what do you think anger is trying to tell us there then? See, emotions, what I've eventually discovered, emotions are tools and messengers. Emotions arise when we have experiences, and we
correct.
have experiences so we can learn. So, each emotion that comes up is offering us a clue on how to resolve the issue that comes up in our experiences. And what is anger pointing out? We want something or we expect something that doesn't always happen. And we need to update our expectation or our want or our idea of how the world works. So, anger is really saying, you got a mistaken idea about how things work here and you need to update. That's its primary job, in my view.
Okay, I can hear that. And here's another perspective for you. Maybe your expectation is not misplaced or mistaken at all. And in that case, what happens is, let's say that you and I have actually agreed to something, and we have a written formal agreement about it. And I do not honor my side of the agreement. You have a valid reason to expect me to abide by my side of the commitment. And when I don't, you have a perfect right to get angry about that. And this is
Okay.
this is something we have to understand. Anger is not always a bad thing. It
Not at
may
all.
actually be pointing to the truth. There may be
It
good reason,
usually
for
is.
example, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
there's a good reason to get outraged about something that's going on in your life, and it helps to motivate you into some kind of action to correct something that's
That's
not
the
right.
That's the second message that anger has for us, that we need to take action.
Right.
However, here's an interesting thing to add to what you were just saying, which is now I had a bad experience with my father, and I was angry with him for probably 40 years. And as we do, I was angry because I didn't want to let him off the hook. And it took me 40 years and a conversation with him in which I confronted him about what had happened. And he didn't remember any of it after 40 years. That I realized that me carrying the anger for 40 years was allowing him to get me twice. So, one of the reasons that I want to move past anger is because, okay, I'd like to use anger's energy to help me learn that I need, either I can't rely on, need to change my expectation that you're a person I can rely on or whatever. Uh, so I can use that, but I also don't want to hold on to it. I don't want to hold
Right.
on to it because it allows the other person to get me twice and over time. And also because I'm holding the anger inside. And the saying that we need to remember is anger poisons the vessel in which it is held. And if we're
Right.
holding anger inside of ourselves, we're poisoning ourselves. Now, let me just get back to anger as energy. I was excited to learn that anger could be energy or emotions could be energy because we usually think working with anger is complicated. But almost all of us know from high school uh, uh, science classes that there are rules that govern energy. We know we can't create it, we can't destroy it, we know it needs to move, we know that it needs to, that we can translate, we can transform that energy into another form. We know if we impede it in some way through it creates resistance and can create problems. We also know it can create a buildup that creates intensity and volume of that particular energy. Well, all of those things also apply to anger. Anger cannot be, or any emotion, anger cannot be created nor destroyed. Anger needs to move. Anger can transform into something else. Anger transformed is enthusiasm, right? And so on down the line. You can substitute anger for energy, which means that all we need to do is work with anger using these principles, and we can release it, right? So if I know I can't I can't create it or get rid of it, then I know I can't end my anger. The anger inside of me, I can't end it, and I can't make it happen, but I can move it. And when we're repressing anger, there are three ways we hold on to anger: repression, suppression, and harboring. So we actively hold it in, or harboring is knowingly hold it in, like I did with my father. I'm going to get you back for this. That's harboring. And so okay, so then we must accept anger. Anger is part of the world. But in the past, the anger I felt was enormous, and now it's like that in my life, and I know how to work with it when it comes up so that it doesn't take up a huge amount of my life. And I work with it based on principles that govern energy, right? So the first thing I know I need to do, if I'm angry with you, David, because you didn't give me that kiss, I know that I have to accept that I feel angry. I have to let myself know that I feel angry. Now, here's an interesting thing. Did you make me angry if you didn't give me the kiss?
I, okay, well, I'm going to get into that topic in just a second here. But before we
Okay.
do, I wanted to acknowledge Amy. She made the comment, still dealing with anger for 30 plus years. And I think I'm bet that there's a lot of people in this world who are going through that kind of experience. You yourself said you were dealing with anger for 40 years. I know I was dealing with it. It wasn't
Actually,
until I was in my early 40s that I finally had the wake up that I knew I had to do something about it. And
you're right.
so this is a problem that we all have to deal with. And as you said, the ultimate solution is to create a place, find a safe place that allows you to release that anger. It
Well,
doesn't
and
matter
you
what the
also,
anger is about. It doesn't matter
right.
who it's directed towards. The point is to release it. Now, in my case, I had the opportunity to do that at a workshop called the New Warrior Training Adventure, put on by the Mankind Project. And I was able to release so much rage that had been locked inside me for so long. At the end of that rage, there was a whole lot of sadness and sorrow behind it.
Because
Yeah.
behind anger is hurt.
Yeah. And what happened, that the release of all of that stuff opened me up to the ability to feel all the other emotions that I had been, because if you stuff one
Absolutely.
emotion, you're stuffing all of them.
And you have to keep them all down. Yes.
That's right. And so it was a beautiful experience that allowed me to understand that I am not anger. I had anger and I had stuffed it.
Anger
And now
passed through
you talked about holding on to anger towards your father for 40 years and the story that you made up about what kind of a person he was and all the rest of it. What I heard you say was the moment you decided to have a conversation with him was the moment that you decided to forgive him. And forgiveness is the ultimate tool for allowing yourself not to hold on to it anymore. It isn't about
Actually,
saying to the other person, it's okay, I agree with what you did. You're not saying that at all. You're saying, I'm releasing myself from this prison I've built, from the poison that I've put into this vessel.
Actually, it was a two-step process for me, and I want to be clear about that because Amy, this may be relevant to you too. My first step was to tell him this happened and you hurt me, and it was painful, and I'm angry with you. And I described chapter and verse all the things that happened, and he didn't. He had excuses. He didn't remember any of it. The best I got, and which I accepted, was he said, it was never my intention to hurt you, and if I hurt you, I apologize. That was as close as I got. And it was years later, when he was ill and dying, that I actually decided to forgive him. And what I would add to what you're saying about forgiveness, David, is that forgiveness is not for the other person, it's
That's
for
right.
me. It's for me, letting me off the hook. And all that forgiveness means is let it go.
That's
Let
right.
it go. And you
Yeah.
don't have to like that person or want to spend time with them or anything like that. Just let it go and recognize you're letting it go because you've been poisoning yourself, possibly even leading yourself closer to death through illness by holding on to it. And why do you need to do that on behalf of somebody who's already hurt you?
Right. And I'm going to say something even more, that I had a huge hatred for my mother as a result of all this stuff that was going on in my life. And it wasn't until after I had done that workshop at the New Warrior Training Adventure that I was finally able to forgive her. But by that time, she was already dead. She had already passed. And there was no way for me to have a conversation with her, not directly, not in the physical realm. So I just simply forgave her. And I said, I don't know if you're there watching over me or what. I don't know, but I forgive you. And I released the energy. It was a choice that I made because I knew I didn't
Yes,
want to hold that energy of my mother because it prevented me from seeing all the amazing, beautiful, fantastic, wonderful things she had done in her life. Yeah, she had made some mistakes. Yeah, she was human. Yeah, she did some abuse towards me, but she was mostly a decent person. And that was the part of my mother that I wanted to see and I wanted to
wonderful.
remember. And the only way I
Wonderful.
could do that was to forgive her completely.
Exactly, exactly. As my father was dying, I did call him and ask him, I'm calling to tell you I forgive you for everything you've done and said. Will you accept my forgiveness? And he said yes. And I said, so will you forgive me for all the things I've done or said that you found painful or difficult? And he said yes. And then I was able to thank him for being my father in this lifetime. I want to
Right.
go over to what Amy's been writing over here. Amy, writing a letter, David, is another thing you can do. You can either do it verbally. The written and the spoken word have power. So you can write or you can speak it. I like to speak it out loud and just talk to them. Now,
Even though
if
they're
you
not necessarily in the same room with you or even
or
in the
in the
same
same
world.
world,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Um, so uh, you do not, just as you did, David, when your mother was already gone. Amy, this person, a person who has mental health issues, you do not have to talk to them directly. You can be in another room, you can be in the woods, you can be in the bathroom if you want and talk to them, because we're working with energy. And that's one of the things that we don't talk about a whole lot, but we're working with energy. So if you clarify your energy and you fill yourself with love and you forgive that person, or you say to that person, I can't deal with this anymore, so I'm going to stay far away from you. We're not going to get the other person to change, but we can change our behavior with that person, and that can give relief. And the interesting thing that I've loved over the years of being a therapist is that you can do energy work and most people don't know you're doing it, so you can get all clean without any resistance at all, and I just love that about it.
Yeah, that's
So
beautiful. I, the other thing that I would say It wasn't, for me personally, it wasn't enough for me to forgive my mom. I also had to forgive myself for having held on to that energy for so long.
Or even
And
put up with what was going on.
well, I'm not even talking about that. I held
Mm.
on to that desire for getting revenge, for justice, for all that BS that my ego mind was attached to. Once I was able to forgive myself and release that, that's when the real healing started for me. And I'm telling you,
Absolutely.
this is one of the most powerful things we can do. First, if we see that there's a perpetrator out there somewhere who has done something to me, and I have reached a point where I am willing to say, okay, I forgive you for what you did. That doesn't mean I ever have to have anything to do with you. It doesn't mean I ever have to be friends with you or any of that stuff. I'm just forgiving you. And I'm also going to forgive myself for all the energy I put into holding on to that anger. Now, by
Absolutely.
doing that, by the way, you're going to heal yourself for sure. But what's going to be even more amazing to you, and this is something most people don't realize, you heal the other person as well. Because you break this
Well, they
chain
have
that's
the
kind of
opportunity
tying
to heal.
together. Yeah, and that allows the other person to heal. You don't know what's going to happen after that. It's not important. What's important is you free yourself from the bonds of your own anger.
So, as my friend Daki often tells me, as a therapist, I make space for things to happen. Thank you, Daki. And that's what you're doing when you forgive the other person. You make space, so they're no longer in a struggle with you in the same way. So they have space to make change. I did a anger class at the Civic Center in Marin County at lunchtime many years ago, and it was a 8 week class. About the third week, this woman raised her hand and she said, "I'm going to believe what you're saying, Ilene, if you can fix this situation with my mother." And I said, "So, well, let's see what we can do." So she's told me that every week on Sunday morning, she picked her mother up and took her to church. And then the mother stayed overnight at her house, and she took her to back home on her way to work on Monday morning. And she said, "By the end of Sunday, I am ready to kill that woman." And I said, "For what?" And she said, "She criticizes me all the time." Oh, I didn't remember that we ever made mashed potatoes like that. Did you, dear? And I said to her, "How long has she been doing this?" "All my life." And I said, "So you're telling me your mother has been criticizing you all your life, and yet you get angry because you think she should not be criticizing you?" First thing you need to change is to realize that criticizing is your mother's best thing. She's going to do it for the rest of her life. Get over yourself, change, you know?
Right.
And so, we talked, and the next session, I told her to go home. And I said, "How many times does your mother criticize you in the day?" And she said, "Oh, at least 5 or 6 times." I said, "Okay, this week you go home, and on Sunday, I want you to get out a little piece of paper and a pencil, and every time your mother criticizes you, I want you to put a mark on the paper. If she does not criticize you 10 times, your job is to get angry with her, right? She's supposed to criticize you 10 times." Well,
I love it.
of course, next week she came back and said her mother only made it to 4 and she couldn't get mad at her. And we checked and we checked. And finally, shift to week 8. And I'm finishing up the class, and I turned to her and I said, "So, what's happening with your mother?" And she looked at me. She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Your mother, the criticism, the mashed potatoes. What's happening?" "She doesn't do that anymore," she said, right? After her whole life. And it was because she stepped back and her mother had room and she just stopped doing it. In the space of, what was that, 5 weeks, the whole thing ended.
Right.
It's just
And on the other
amazing.
hand, maybe mom still did some criticism, but it just kind of was water off a duck's back after that.
Right. So I want to, Amy, I want to come back to you on this whole thing. You say, I have anger, hurt, sadness, and anxiety. Because I want to do a little exercise here, David, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yep.
Um, and this can be used with any uh, of the emotions. Um, so all of us are going to, I'll tell you what it is and then we'll do it together. All of us are going to close our eyes. And because hurt is under sadness, and that's one of the fastest ways, I mean, under anger, excuse me, hurt is under anger. One of the fastest ways to release anger is to acknowledge the hurt. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop a cadence and we're going to say these words. I'm hurt, I'm hurt, I'm hurt, I'm hurt in a cadence. If anything comes up, feel free to intervene and just say, I'm hurt that I have to do this stupid exercise at all. I'm hurt, okay? Whatever comes up, and we're going to do it until I tell you to stop. Now, what I want you to do is notice when you first close your eyes, uh, just notice how you're feeling. And then, I just disappeared, everybody. That's cute. Anyway, notice what's happening, and then speak out loud. And when you stop, keep your eyes closed and notice what's happening then as well. And we can talk about it on the other side. All ready? All right. So close your eyes and start repeating with me out loud. I'm hurt. I'm
I'm
hurt.
hurt.
I'm
I'm
hurt.
hurt.
I'm
I'm hurt.
hurt. I'm
I'm hurt.
hurt.
I'm
I'm
hurt.
hurt that someone spoke harshly to me. I'm hurt. I'm hurt. I'm
I'm
hurt. I'm hurt. I'm hurt.
hmm.
Okay, let's stop. So you can put your comments in over there. David, will you be our guinea pig again? Did you
Sure.
notice
Yeah.
anything?
Honestly, okay. One thing that did come up, I've got a neighbor down the street who insists on placing a basketball hoop in the middle of the sidewalk. And I have reported this person multiple times and nothing ever gets done about it. So I am hurt that this person doesn't live up to my expectation of keeping a basketball hoop off of the public conveyance known as a sidewalk.
Okay, good. And so now you release that and you can see that you have that expectation. Now, if you want to heal that repressed anger, that anger that you've been carrying around about this, what would you need to do? You would need to, first of all, notice the city doesn't care and he doesn't care. Therefore, this is not going to change. This is not a person who's going to develop into the person you want him to be. And even your town is not going to develop into to the agency you want it to be. So, what can you change in this situation?
Well, I can walk in a different street,
Right. You can change yourself. You can walk elsewhere. You can
right?
laugh every time you go around it. You can say, this is what I do with drivers who take up too much room on the street. I go, oh, I forgot. You own the road.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you own the sidewalk. So
right,
the change comes in you, and you notice what comes up as we laugh about it
right.
because we're not holding on. We couldn't laugh if we were still holding on. Okay, so we got some comments over. Okay, so you didn't feel anything different. So one thing I will tell you is often you might not feel anything different. You're not used to it, so do it more. And there are two things generally people feel. One is it releases, so you feel less, and two, it gets stronger. If your anger or your sadness or your hurt gets stronger, that is the indication that you've got those emotions that you're holding on inside and that you need to work with them. Okay, Cheryl.
Well,
Uh,
Cher asked, her comment seems to be related to our previous conversation about, you had anger towards your father. I had anger towards my mom. She said, you two had very clear villains. What if this anger is simply there? It seems like that anger is about forgiving self to rid yourself of this free-floating anger right below the surface. I would like to know, though, the crux of the issue. So I think what Cher is saying is that she's just feeling this general sense of anger, and she can't pinpoint a specific target for it at this point. So
You
what
know,
would be your recommendation in that
yeah,
case?
yeah, you know where I go. Now, you will have, everybody will have their own beliefs, but David, I know you have a spiritual philosophy. I go to asking help. The principle is that help will not be given unless we ask for it. So I just speak out loud and say, I see that there's anger under the surface. I don't want to keep carrying it. Please show me what I need to do to release it. Please help me to release this anger. Please show me what I can focus on instead. One very important principle in this, especially in this culture, is we tend to focus on the problem, the anger that's under there. And anything we focus on, we feed energy to, and it grows.
Right.
And so the principle that the way that I learned to say it and used it as the sign off for my program when I had it years ago is pay attention not to what you want to overcome, but to what you want to become. So I could focus. Please help me to become a person who is free of anger. Please show me what I'm like when I am not carrying anger. Please help me to forgive. Turn it loose. You
Yeah,
do
those
not
are
have to know who it is.
right. That's beautiful. I love that approach because it opens up to the possibility of support from universal spirit, which is always there to guide us and provide support for us anyway. And
Right.
even if you are, you talked about focusing on the problem and feeding energy into it. Well, even if you are focused on the solution, you are still feeding energy to the problem. I like your approach better because you're saying, help me to see myself as a person who is free of anger. I love that. That is a beautiful image to create.
Not
Help me
just
to
see,
see
but know
myself as a
myself.
person. Yeah, help me to see myself and experience myself as a compassionate, forgiving being. And it's amazing how the universe will provide a pathway for finding that in your life. And what happens is the problem that you thought you had starts to go away on its own, and the solution
Absolutely.
emerges in that beautiful new vision.
Right. And this is what makes working with things this way easier. This is one of the things. It's not all up to you. You know, we are here. I haven't gone into that much, but what has helped me to these understandings is to see the earth as a big giant school. We all come here in order to learn. We have experiences as a way of learning. Emotions come up. Every experience gives us an opportunity to learn something. Emotions come up when we have experiences, and emotions are messengers. Every emotional category has a message for us. I have that in my book, Emotions in Motion, Mastering Life's built-in navigation system. I have 12 emotions, so you could get the message from them. But the idea is that we're in the school, we have these experiences, we are much better off if we go embrace the learning and start learning immediately. And we have these tools called emotions that are helping us. Could you try again? What it is that we need to look at and do. And if we develop the behavior of embracing, something's come up, this is what I need. And let me give you a brief example in my own life. Years ago, my son got accepted to a school straight out of his sophomore year in high school. And I was living in California, and the school he got accepted to and went to was across the country in Massachusetts, right? And all my life, every time there was change, I got frozen. I would freeze. Even the change of school is starting now or school is ending now, I got to the point where I couldn't even make appointments with my clients because I just froze. And guess what I started doing when my loved lovely 16-year-old decided he's going away to college in a matter of a month and a half. I started freezing. And I said, okay, I've had enough of that. I've been doing it all my life. So I started, show me what it is that I need to change in order to not freeze. And I would ask it every time I thought of it, every time I noticed I was frozen. I asked it for 5 days. And on the fifth day at 4:30 in the morning, I woke up with some words in my head. Those words were love the changes. What the hell does that mean? That's what I first asked. What does it mean? And it took me to looking at little children. If you're a little child and you're playing on the floor in the dining room and an adult goes through saying, I'm going to go to the store, what do little children do? They jump up and go, can I come? Can I come? They love the changes. They change quickly. And so I realized that what I needed to do was embrace the change and recognize that it was not only a change for my son, but it was a change possibly for me as well.
Right.
And then as I looked at it, I realized that because of the events of my own life, I had frozen myself, my growth, at the age that children do that, around 3 years old. I was frozen. I was taken away from my birth mother right before I turned 3. I was frozen. And so loving the changes means get back to being a little kid and embracing life and having fun. And guess what happened in my life? He did fine at school, but what happened in mine? I got my first writing contract and I found my third husband. There you go.
There you go.
That's what the universe had in mind for me.
Right. Well, and you know, this is really beautiful and amazing stuff that we've been talking about. And what I want to do is we're coming up to the top of the hour here, and I want to give people, you know, a couple of suggestions for, you know, kind of a daily practice, if you like. And you know, I know that we talk about meditation and mindfulness and yoga and exercise and all kinds of other things like that. But remember, our goal here is to help people to heal repressed anger. So what I want, if you could give me 2 or 3 really solid ideas so that people can take these away and start implementing them in their daily practice.
Yes. The first thing I would suggest is that you adopt the idea that anger comes into your life in order to teach you and help you get free, and that you allow it in. The second is to decide to embrace learning, to start looking for what is this experience trying to teach me. And I I also like to add, what would I have to believe in order to have this kind of experience? Because our beliefs guide our lives. We live according to what we believe, and beliefs are held in the subconscious mind, and we don't always know what they are. But our experiences are constantly trying to expose them to us. So I would look for the belief. And then for a shortcut, I would ask, help me to heal this. Show me what I need to do to heal this, and then allow yourself to have the courage and the trust to do what you get as a response to that. Just as I did when I took off in my RV years ago. Okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm going.
Right.
So, you know, I would do that. And the last thing, really important, is gratitude. When these things change, be grateful, because the principle of gratitude is the law of increase. Whatever you're grateful for, you get more of. So if you're grateful for the growth, there is more in my book, and I put my email up there. I don't know if I because I'm moving around, I don't always know, but I offer all the people on this call, if you're interested, a 20-minute free consultation. My email is in this text, Ilene@emotionalpro.com.
Can you just drop that in one more time, because that's at the
Sure.
top of the chat and people may not see it. Well, Ilene, I
Okay.
just want to say thank you so much. It's been an awesome conversation. This has been. I know that we have healed some major issues for a lot of people today, the people who are here on the panel live today, listening in, and those who may be watching the recording. So I want to thank you for that, because it's really brilliant stuff that you're sharing. Before I
I'm so
close out,
excited about it. I want to
yeah,
ask everybody to help me spread the word. I'm dedicated to doing that. This
right,
last
yeah,
part of my life is sharing what I've learned because it's so freeing. Oh my gosh.
right,
Thank
and
you.
so great. Is there a final message of love you'd like to share before I begin closing us out?
Well, funny you should use that word. The thing that changed my life in 1994, I was writing a booklet on love, and one of the resources I sought said, "Love is love is love. It doesn't matter if you're loving yourself or loving somebody else. What does matter is that you choose to live your life on the principle of love." And in 1994, I made that choice and my life has transformed. Ask my friend Daki. I used to cry myself to sleep because I didn't have any friends, and
Right,
that is not an issue now.
right,
And because what you have inside of you, you tend to attract from outside of you. So once you're loving yourself, the world loves you, and you love the world. That's that's what comes up when you've processed and healed repressed anger anyway. Room to feel love and joy.
yeah. And I'm going to just drop this link here. This is the link to, I hope you can see that. This is the link to Ilene's book on Amazon. So you can grab a copy of that. And so, again, I want to just say thank you so much, Ilene. It's just been a real pleasure to have you here. And I want to say to everybody who's here now, remember, developing a regular self care routine that includes activities that bring joy and relaxation can contribute to overall emotional well being, allowing you to gradually let go of repressed anger and embrace a more balanced and peaceful state of mind. And also remember that healing from repressed anger is a gradual process. So give yourself the time and the patience and the self compassion. The rewards are well worth the effort. I want to thank you all for watching today's program and remind you that you can catch the recordings of this and every other episode on my website at lifemasterytv.com. And I also invite you to remember to practice my life mastery mantra. Try and do this every day. It's real simple. It goes like this: I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So
Lovely.
until we meet again, I am David McLeod, your life mastery coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. I'll see you next time on Life Mastery TV. Bye bye for now.